Welcome, folks, back to Dominant Mets Nation. And what a game! What a freaking game! The New York Mets walk it off once again against the Philadelphia Phillies, winning 6-5 in dramatic fashion. Folks, if you listen real closely, you could probably hear a Philly fan crying because right now, let the excuses roll. I mean, folks, it's just blatantly obvious. This is a superior team. The New York Mets are a superior team to the Philadelphia Phillies. I know we're going to hear a bunch of excuses, but the Mets, again, have this mental edge no matter what the situation is. You know, the Mets go up, Philly comes back, hits that big home run against Hell's Joke in the 8th inning, makes it 5-5. Fans are sweating. The New York Mets went to Edwin Diaz. This is a game you just have to win. And you know what? Edwin, 2 very strong innings, gets it to the 9th inning, and you're facing the best closer the Phillies have, a very top-rated closer. I will give him that. But the Mets, literally every single batter gets on base, and then it leads to Nimmo, the 6th batter in the lineup. And I do really like this lineup, the way it's set up, especially against lefties. Nimmo comes through, every single batter for that matter, in the 9th inning against a guy who throws 102 miles per hour, right on it. Marte, Alonso, Beatty got a little lucky, but Nimmo gets a good piece of contact on the ball. The New York Mets, again, you got to give them all the credit in the world. This was such a fun game. We're going to go through the details. We're going to go over some of the crazy excuses the Phillies are making. I mean, I think the Phillies right now are just psyching themselves out because in their heads, they're like, how could we be losing to the Mets? How can we? When in reality, they're just not as good. I mean, we have their number in just such an astronomical way that it's kind of comical now. Comical. I mean, Jesus Luzardo is flipping out on the 2nd batter of the game. He's flipping out. I just don't get it. Like, I mean, honestly, I don't want to call any player dumb. I know these guys are athletes, but flipping out on the ump for a non-consequential play in the 2nd batter of the game for like the timeout, if it was called, if it was not called against Soto, you approaching and, you know, being very aggressive towards the ump, that is the dumbest thing you could do. The dumbest thing you could do. You saw in the 1st inning, there was 1 or 2 pitches that could have been called a strike, but no, you're not going to show up the ump and get calls. So very, very dumb. That set the tone for the Phillies in a very bad way. And of course, when you're done, when you get kicked out of the game, when the Mets give you the boot, I mean, you literally flip out on the up again. Control yourself. You're supposed to be a professional athlete. Have some self-control. You lost. You got pummeled. Okay, your team got pummeled, annihilated the night before. You didn't have a good showing today. Take it as a professional and go have, you know, another nice game next time. Maybe there's another team you can beat. All right, but I mean, the ump did the right thing. You got to throw a guy out. A guy shows you up like that, bye. You know, hit the road, Jack. So, I mean, it's just so funny. And then you hear Bryce Harper's. Did everybody hear Bryce Harper's comments after the first game? Oh, my God. So before I get into that, you know, I'm excited. I'm happy, just like all of you. Before we get going, whether you're watching this on live or on replay, hit the like button. It really helps the channel. I continue to thank you guys in advance. And if you're not yet subscribed, again, hit the subscribe button. Okay, got that out of the way. Everyone so far, big pump. Danny, oh man, yeah, this was a very, very good game. I mean, you know, coming into the game, can Manaea actually have a decent performance? Can he have a good performance? Can he go long? A lot of questions. And then you're like, this is a good Phillies lineup. This good Phillies lineup, are they going to like annihilate him, or are they going to do something damage? So the game wasn't that bad from that aspect. We're going to analyze Manaea's performance. There's some great opportunities as well. But before we get to Bryce Harper's comments, we have a lot of things to discuss. Number one, the the parabolic mics. I mean, okay, I didn't know what it was called last night. The little cylinder things. Apparently, they're parabolic mics. That is what had Mr. Alec Bohm all, upset, crying. I can't hit if there's a parabolic mic out there. So that had Mr. Alec Bohm very upset. But, honestly, frankly, they didn't hit. I didn't even realize that they didn't. I don't think they had any hits since removing the mics last night in yesterday's game. Today's performance wasn't that much better, but what I think that instant did is it really motivated and woke up a sleeping giant. It really showed like this is the class of the NL East, the Phillies. Well, we're better than the Phillies. We're better than the Phillies. Duran, that's their ace closer. And yes, he's a good closer. But the Mets have shown you that, hey, obviously he's beatable. Christopher Sanchez dominating against every other team, not allowing more than 4 runs in a game. Well, the Mets scored 6 off him. Easy, pretty easy. So the New York Mets, I hope MLB is watching. Every other team gets to see what the game plan is against guys like Christopher Sanchez, guys like Jesus Luzardo. The New York Mets lineup, you give them credit. Up and down the lineup, put great at bats. They made this guy work. They took some close pitches. But at the end of the day, this lineup put a lot of pressure on. Now, yesterday, you had Lindor, you had Alonso. They weren't that great. They were 1 for 11. Today, Alonso, give him all the credit in the world. Passing the baton on, going 4 for 5, getting 4 hits. Lindor got 2 big hits. Up and down the lineup, great job. You didn't have to rely on the bottom of the lineup like yesterday. McNeil didn't have a hit. Torrens didn't have a hit. So yesterday, everybody was saying, well, the bottom of the lineup carried the team. The Mets got lucky. Well, if that's your excuse, if you're a Philly fan, or if you think that's why you shouldn't have, the Mets shouldn't have won, all right, the top of the lineup beat you today. And towards the middle. But again, if you're a Mets fan, you got to feel good. Drop a comment in the chat. Let me know how you're feeling because you got to feel good because this extends the streak, right? We extend our winning streak. We cut the Phillies lead from 7 games to 5 games. And again, I was one who adamantly said, I will not give up on this division. This division. I mean, it would have been nice to win that game on Sunday. That would have, been really nice. But okay, that would have made it a 6-game lead by Philly going into this series. But that's fine. If we win tomorrow's game and we have McClain on the mound, that's a 4-game lead. And you have over a month to play. So that is certainly not insurmountable. And this is not the last series we play Philly. So if you keep it to 3-4 games and you want to go, mop up Philly again, beat them a couple more series or one more series after this specifically, the Mets have another opportunity to close that gap even more. So again, super exciting. And you got Jonathan going on Friday. So folks, I was just so happy. I was so happy this game. And again, the Mets are proving that they are better than what they've played. They are certainly better. Again, you see the bats. The bats have woken up. The pitching, maybe Manaea, Senga, according to Mendoza, according to David Stearns specifically, I heard it from him. He says with those two, specifically Manaea, that they need time to build themselves up physically. And then they also made it, I think Ron Darling brought this up on the in the show, that they also need to be built up mentally too. You need to be built up mentally to go 6 or 7. All right, whatever the excuse is, I'll give Manaea credit. He looked much better today. He looked much better. He went 4 2/3 innings. He did give up 6 hits, 2 earned runs allowed, 8 strikeouts. Much better than the last couple performances. But the thing is, you still got to get length out of him because what did this do? This is another game where the bullpen comes in early and you really have to rely heavily on guys that you don't want to rely on. I'll be honest. Helsley in this game, I'm not sure why he was in. I really don't know why he was in this game. I'm going to repeat. I really don't know. Yesterday's game, I'm like, this is perfect. You guys were up by a tremendous amount. This is the perfect game to put him in. But when it's a minimal deficit, it was a 2-run deficit, you put Ryan Helsley in, who has only had one successful outing in the last 8. I didn't get that. I did not get that. But you know what? Mistakes were made. Then after that, you know what? Let's get down to business. Then he brought in Diaz, and obviously he wanted to be aggressive after that. But again, I thought that was a very, very silly move. What's up, Richard? So put Manaya in the pen. Well, you know what? You're going to have to do something. I mean, if the guy's going to go 4 innings, 4 innings, today he went 4 2/3. You got to at least be able to go 5 solid innings. You got to be able to go 5. I mean, the Mets could have let him, get out of that inning. But I think the Mets, obviously Mendoza would have been crushed if Manaya gave up. If he gave up a hit in that situation with men on base in the 5th inning, you got to crush him. I mean, you bring in a fresh arm. You bring in a fresh arm at that point, and Manaya has shown you when he's facing the lineup 2 and third time especially, he was facing the lineup the 3rd time at that point that the batting average against is close to 400. So the numbers have not been kind to Manaya. Until Manaya proves, and I know some people were very upset that Manaya was taken out in that situation, but Manaya has to earn a chance to pitch in those situations. He has to earn a chance to pitch in those situations. Now, I know a hit was you got a hit. They got a hit off Gregory Soto. That played in a couple of runs. But again, you brought in a fresh arm, and, you did the best you could with that matchup. All right, so let me get to, before we go over some game details, let me get off to what Mr. Bryce Harper said, and I'm not sure how many people have heard about this, but and this is the I would say mentality going through that Phillies clubhouse. It's very important, especially a team that you're probably going to see down the road, a team that you're probably going to play in the playoffs. Like, it's good to know, analyze how the other team's thinking, how the other team approaches the game against you. And so Bryce Harper, they had a brutal reminder, obviously, of their struggles at Citi Field. They're struggling. 9 straight losses at Citi Field. The Mets at Citi Field have that edge. And I believe on the show, they mentioned that the Mets have beaten the Phillies 22 out of the last 28 games. I forget who said that, but that is significant, considerably significant. All right, so after dominating the Mets once through the order, Christopher Sanchez yesterday yielded 3 runs on 5 hits to fumble a 3-run lead in the 4th. Then he returned to the dugout yesterday. He kicked the trash can. He kicked the trash can. I mean, these Philly players, I mean, they got anger issues. And again, I think they are just so mentally hurt that the Mets are beating them over and over and over. And in their heads, they're like, I'm superior to the Mets. But it's just so comical because they're not. They lose all the time. So again, they can keep thinking of it. They can show how many anger issues they have. Obviously, you got Jesus Luzardo flipping out on the second pitch of the game. You got Christopher Sanchez kicking, stuff in the dugout. This is what the Mets lineup did to the 2 starting pitchers. Luzardo's flipping out. You got Sanchez kicking garbage cans. That's how frustrating it is to face a Mets lineup. All right. Great job, New York Mets. So what did Bryce Harper say about what the Mets did? Because Bryce Harper had a pretty, I would say, significant allegation against the New York Mets. So this was pretty significant. Okay, so he did. This is what he said. So after the Phillies game, Phillies slugger Bryce Harper pointed out that the Mets hitters had been remarkably successful against Christopher Sanchez in the second time through the batting order. That led Mr. Bryce Harper to suggest that the Mets had noticed something that gave them an indication of which pitch he was going to throw. So according to Mr. Bryce Harper, he says that the Mets only did good because they realized Christopher Sanchez was tipping pitches. So according to Bryce Harper, this is his quote. He says, he might have been tipping a little bit, Harper said after the game. We'll see. The Mets are so good at it, meaning catching guys tipping pitches. I think they're one of the best teams in the game at really getting guys and getting tips. So whether the Mets were really tipping, or whether Sanchez was really tipping pitches or not, I mean, obviously that's really not the question. That's really not the question. They scored 13 runs yesterday. All of them weren't on Sanchez. So clearly you were facing a hot lineup who was all your pitchers tipping? Were everybody pitchers tipping? Because if that's the case, I mean, that's on the Phillies. And we know that's not the case. It's just a team making constant excuses. And honestly, it's comical. This is why I like beating the Phillies over and over and over. Now, last year when the Phillies were supposedly making their run, that was the only team where I'm like, I don't really fear. I don't care if we have to play them in the playoffs because we play so well against them. And this has gone back years. So the New York Mets continue their hot trend and they continue to literally anger the hell out of Philly fans and anger the hell, more importantly, out of Philly players. I mean, which team have we played where you saw both pitchers flip out, literally both pitchers flip out, and their star player make allegations of the Mets, the Mets getting tips about their pitchers? I mean, it's just insane. It's insane. Not to mention Alec Boehm complaining, crying about a parabolic mic that's been there for 3 years. Can you make this up? You got 4 Philly players crying and making excuses. Wow. I mean, just take the loss and move on. What are we going to hear tomorrow with Nolan McLean on the mound? What are we going to hear? Does Nolan McLean have the color of his glove? The laces are too long in his glove? It's going to be some silly thing like that. But again, it's helping the Mets. It's giving the Mets the mental edge. I saw something on X saying that the Mets look mentally superior to the Phillies. And it's absolutely right. When you go, you want to look professional. Lindor, up and down the lineup, you got these guys, even Soto. Soto, he took a couple pitches today, very close strikes. I wish he would have swung at a couple more. But, a guy like Soto really seemed like he frustrated the other pitchers. So whatever, he did his job in that regard, although we'll go over some spots where, I'm like, you got to swing the bat. You got to swing the bat. All right. Would you, right? Robbie, Phillies excuse tomorrow. Pitchers on the Mets throw the ball too fast. You know what? Maybe. Maybe. What's up, Ray? How's it going tonight? Michael, Phillies are so beat down by our New York Mets. And that's also another thing. Not only are you winning against the Phillies, you are creating momentum for your team. And, juxtapose that, you have the team that's at the top going in the other direction. And folks, the Phillies came in here hot. They came in here winning 6 out of their last 7. So it's not like, a crippled Phillies team came in here. They were riding high. When they leave Citi Field, they already lost the series. The Mets already took the series from them. They're going to be going out on a sour note. And that's what I want. I mean, I want to demoralize that team. And that's what you do. If you're a good team and you're fighting for a division spot, I mean, the only thing is right now, it's clear that the Mets are playing for more. I mean, it's clear. The Phillies right now, their demeanors are off. Their performances off. Their players are all, playing like, it's a joke right now. It's again, like Alec Boehm, parabolic mics, Luzardo's going nuts in the second pitch. Christopher Sanchez kicked something in a dugout. Bryce Harper is making all these crazy allegations. I mean, you have such a psychological advantage over that team. I love it. And Robbie, you're right. It's payback 07-08. That still hurts. 7 games, 17 to go. But it's at least that's in the past, at least. And I remember in 2006, I spoke to Jose Reyes in the offseason. That was a tough. 06 was tough too. Sorry to get off topic. 06, the Mets got eliminated by the Cardinals. Beltran strike three looking. I spoke to literally Jose Reyes 2 weeks later. He was going on a trip to the Dominican Republic to see his family. And I'm like, Jose, are we going to win next year? And honestly, I'm a nobody, but he promised we were going to win. But, that's why that 07 season was quite disappointing. All right, so let's get into some more stuff. So again, the thing was, how was Manaea gonna do, right? And I wrote it on my scorecard here. Manaea is a guy that needs to be motivated, right? He needs to be motivated. Now I know between last start and this start, Stearns is saying the guy needs time to build up his arm, to build up stamina. But he clearly looked a bit more focused. He was facing a better hitting lineup, right? So I think he was using the changeup more. He was locating his fastball, fastball high in the strike zone. He was using the sweeper slider away to lefties. I mean, it just seemed like he was mixing up pitches, changing speeds, and he wasn't doing that. He was not doing that the last couple games. At least, not throughout the whole game. So this is really, Manaea like being motivated. And they mentioned it also, like you have reinforcements coming. You have Jonathan coming. You have obviously Nolan, Mr. Nolan here. And I keep wanting to call him Nolan Ryan, but Nolan McLean here already dominating. And that's got to put pressure on a Sean Manaea. That's got to put pressure on a Kodai Senga. And, even though these two guys didn't get killed, Senga allowed 3 runs, and he had a good performance to get out of the 4th. Manaea let up 2 runs. The thing that these guys still are not doing that they're going to have to do is they're going to have to go further into the games. They're going to have to prove that they can go further into the game, because what do? In these last 2 games, you exhaust your bullpen, and, Ryan Helsley, again, I mean, that's a guy that you didn't have to go to, especially, you want to get him in a game. You got him in a game yesterday. So that's why I'm like, okay, when was the last time he pitched? Like, for a second, I'm like, I know he pitched in that blowout. And I'm like, oh, wait, that blowout was yesterday. And I'm like, so I really had no clue why he was in the game a day after he just pitched, and the game is a 2-run game. That really just made no sense. That's a decision on Carlos Mendoza. All right, so the first inning, Manaea looked pretty good. He struck out Turner. Schwarber fly ball to center field. Harper got a nice hit. Harper, if you notice, what Manaea was doing is when he was changing speeds, you saw blatantly batters, they were swinging the bat slower. He was controlling the guy's swings, which was pretty impressive. I didn't see that in the last start, but a guy like Bryce Harper is so damn talented with the bat. He was still able to get a single. He got a couple of nice hits this game. Realmuto came up in the first inning, and he struck out. So the bottom of the first inning is when the action began to start. So Lindor up on the plate. He actually got jammed. So there was a pop-up. He had a pop-up to Bryce Harper. Then Mr. Juan Soto stepped up to the plate, and obviously we know what happened. So I believe there was like 1 or 2 pitches thrown. The next pitch, Juan Soto puts up his hand. Then I guess the umpire granted time. Luzardo didn't see it, or maybe the ump didn't put up his hand high enough. I didn't even see what happened. They didn't play the replay. So then Luzardo threw the ball, and it didn't count. He said that Soto called time. Then all of a sudden, again, Luzardo, just like it's the last play of the game, or it was a consequential play, he starts to intimidate the umpire. And I'm like, what? Did I miss something? Was there something bigger here? And I'm like, you're flipping out over, a time being granted, and you didn't think you should have got the time granted. I mean, it just seemed like such a little minuscule thing. But you know what? At that point, you really knew early on that the New York Mets had a mental edge. All right. So Soto would continue to work the count, and there was a strike in there. There was a strike. I believe it was the 2-2 pitch. That would, to me, it was on the corner. To me, it should have been a strike. But again, you show up the ump, they called it a ball. Then the next pitch after that, it was a little more outside the strike zone. Soto ends up working out a walk. But again, that is just 101. If anybody is playing Little League Baseball, do never show up the ump in that type of way. Okay, so we got a man on base, and you got Starling Marte up. One man is on base, and you have one out. Starling Marte actually flies out to the second baseman, and Mundo Sosa makes it 2 outs. You got Pete Alonso up, and Pete Alonso, again, today, Pete Alonso was extra hot. And this at bat, Pete Alonso, in my opinion, he got jammed. In the first inning, he got jammed, but he was still strong enough to muscle it out there, and he ended up lining it to the left fielder, Weston Wilson, gets on base with a single. All right, you got 2 outs, 2 men on base. And again, what are you doing? Well, again, you have Luzardo angry. You have Luzardo working his pitch count up. So at the very least, in my head, I'm like, we won this inning because we got the guy throwing a lot of pitches and we have them all worked up. All right. So Mark Vientos would be coming up to the plate. Swaggy V, is he going to come up with a hit? This and that? Well, he has a very good at bat. He ends up working the count and he takes a walk. Juan Soto the third, Pete Alonso the second. You have bases loaded. Brandon Nimmo. And this could have been the point where the Mets really jumped all over the Phillies, right? I had this at bat really kind of starred in my book early on, but unfortunately, Brandon Nimmo would strike out swinging. You know, even though this happened, this moment in the game would kind of like feel so much better later on when Brandon Nimmo had that big hit. All right, so going to the second inning, the Phillies didn't score. The Mets didn't score. Really not much happened in the top of the second inning. Manaea continued to be pretty good. Ground out Alec Boehm, the parabolic Mike guy. Nick Castellanos struck out, and Harrison Bader struck out. Very easy inning. Next inning, Tyrone Taylor for the Mets would single. Again, Tyrone Taylor continues to stay very, very hot. So Tyrone Taylor, you give him a lot of credit. McNeil, the next guy, McNeil would be up, and Tyrone Taylor actually got caught trying to take his lead. And I believe, this is the one where they threw down a second, and he got called out. He got called out. So he was picked off. So the Mets right now in the last couple games, it seems like MLB has really learned that Mets runners take that walking lead. Well, you know what? The Mets did going to have to adjust. Next batter would strike out Jeff McNeil, and Luis Torrens would strike out. So, the Mets and the Phillies throughout the first 4 innings, really not much going on. There was not much run scoring at all. Top of the third inning, you had 1 hit from Edmundo Sosa. Then you had a ground out by Weston Wilson. Trey Turner would strike out, and Kyle Schwarber again would ground out. So, Manaea had some really much needed strikeouts. He did a really good job. He did a really good job early on. He just threw a lot of pitches. In the bottom of the third inning, you had a fly out from Lindor. Juan Soto grounds out, and Marte grounds out as well. Top of the fourth inning, Bryce Harper, he singles. Then the good thing is Bryce Harper tries to steal, the speedy Bryce Harper, the guy who's throwing those allegations. Torrens throws such a nice ball. And what I love about Torrens is he's so damn quick. As soon as he receives the ball in such a fluid motion, the ball is being thrown down to second base. He kind of threw it into the runner a bit, so you kind of tagged him on the back leg. But it was such a nice, strong throw by Torrens. And the motion from when it hit the glove to when the ball got out of his hand was so damn fluid. Just such a pretty thing to watch. So that was 1 out. JT Realmuto would then strike out. Boehm, parabolic Mike Boehm, he would hit a single. Good for him. And then Castellanos would strike out. Bottom of the fourth inning, Mets, didn't really do that much. You had Pete Alonso continuing to hit. He got a single. Mark Vientos strikes out, line out by Nimmo, hit by pitch. Tyrone Taylor got hit in the foot. And then you had Jeff McNeil striking out, fouled into the glove. The fourth inning, that was the first time the Mets started to threaten, because you had the single by Alonso, and then you had the hit by pitch by Tyrone Taylor, and Jeff McNeil was in a position with 2 outs and obviously 2 men on base. He would strike out. So first 4 innings were pretty eventless. Nobody scored. Really not much action happened except for the Luzardo blow up and a couple of guys who were picked off trying to steal. All right, so going to the 5th inning is when some of the action, a lot of the scoring really happened in the 5th inning. You had Manaea still in the game. And again, if you're Mendoza, you're trying to see how much you can get out of this guy. Can he go 5? Can he go 5? And I believe his pitchers going into this inning, I wrote it down right here. Manaea had 67 pitches starting the 5th inning. So, if you're going to have him pitch around 90, he still has 23 pitches to play with. So the first guy up, Harrison Bader, ends up singling to center field. And Mundo Sosa, next guy up, strikes out. Very good. Weston Wilson grounds out into a force out. So you got 2 outs, 1 man on base. And, quite possibly we would be able to get in out of this inning. And I do want to mention that if you don't remember, the Weston Wilson ground out, that was when Francisco Lindor made that web gem diving play. Otherwise, that ball goes out into the outfield, and we are in a lot worse situation than we ended up being in. So great play, web gem, Francisco Lindor. At least we got an out in that situation. All right, so you got 1 man on, you got 2 outs. The only problem is you got the top of the lineup coming up. Trey Turner, next batter up, he would single on a ground ball to the right fielder. Weston Wilson would go to third base. And now it is first and third, 2 outs. Again, was this going to be a situation where you had Manaea try to get that last out? This was probably the biggest decision thus far. And, me right now, the first thing when I saw him signaling to the bullpen, I'm like, Manaea has not proven thus far that he can get, go through the 3rd time in the order. He cannot. His batting average against is around 360 the 3rd time through. So, when you got a guy like Kyle Schwarber walking up to the plate, you're probably most likely going to your bullpen. So Gregory Soto was brought into the game. So Gregory Soto facing Kyle Schwarber. One of his pitches went a little wild, which caused Trey Turner to go to second. So you have second and third, and you have Schwarber up. Schwarber ends up walking. So now you have bases loaded, Bryce Harper. And, I got to say, Bryce Harper, obviously, I'm not a big fan, especially after what he pulled yesterday. But Bryce Harper, a very nice piece of hitting. He singled on a line drive to the left fielder. And if you remember, this ball was the one. Nice single over Francisco Lindor's head. 2 runs are plated, and the Phillies jumped out to that 2-0 lead. All right, good for them. Next guy up, strikeout guy, JT Realmuto strikes out. So how do the Mets respond? How do the Mets respond? And you know what? The Mets actually responded in such a big way. So you still have Luzardo in the game. So Luzardo is still in the game. He's probably, really playing inside his head and mad at the Mets fans. So he's about to explode. But he continues to pitch in the inning, and the first guy up, Luis Torrens, he hits. See, that's the thing. When you're just playing mental games inside your head because you just can't control it, you're going to not have the best of control. You're not going to have the best of control. So he hits, and I believe that was the second guy he hit. He hit Luis Torrens, and the second guy up, Francisco Lindor, singles on a fly ball to against center field. So you got 2 men on, and Juan Soto at the plate. And again, every single time Juan Soto comes up with men on base, I'm like, is this going to be Juan Soto's magic Mets moment? Hit a home run, this and that. But you know what? No. So Juan Soto continues to move the baton, hand the baton to the next guy. He hits a nice line drive single to center field, Harrison Bader, and now we are in business. The Mets cut the lead from 2-0 to 2-1, and the Mets right now continue to put pressure on Luzardo. Starling Marte is up on the plate, and again, there were a couple of close calls during this at bat, but Starling Marte ends up working a very nice walk. Now, you know there were close calls in this at bat because after this at bat is the time where it was decided they're going to take, the Phils are going to take Jesus Luzardo out of the game. Luzardo begins to walk up the mound, and again, he can't control himself. The guy can't control himself. He's flipping out. He's pointing at the ump. He's jawing. Who knows what he's saying? Didn't help him out. He gets ejected from the game, and now you have Kerkering in the game. Kerkering is a guy where the Mets really have his number. Like, the Mets really own this guy. Just like they own the Phillies, they specifically own Kerkering themselves. All right, so next guy up, you have Pete Alonso with a couple men on base, and Pete Alonso, I don't know, like when he initially hit this ball, I didn't think it was going to travel to the warning track, but it just shows you how strong Pete is. He ends up getting a ball kind of toward the inner part of the bat. He hits a line drive with a little air under it to the left center field gap. 2 men score, and the Mets take the lead. Citi Field is going nuts, especially after a guy like Luzardo makes a big stink. So it is 3-2 Mets. And the Mets continue to put their foot on the gas. Mark Vientos, he singles. That brings in another run. It is 4-2. Then you got Nimmo. He has a sac fly, a nice sac fly to center field. Now it is 5-2. And, the Mets didn't score anymore after that, but the Mets continued to put up good at-bats. Tyrone Taylor, he had a walk. All right, so the Mets did their damage in the 5th inning, made it 5-2, kind of showing their, showing that they could still respond. And that's what I wanted. I wanted a response. You let up 2 runs. Let's see how you respond. And at this point right now, Manaea is out of the game, and this is the bullpen's game to win. This is the bullpen's game to win. You are up 5-2. Hold it down. Hopefully like last night. And then also, too, I'm like, can the offense continue to add on? Now, we would have a little trouble with that. All right. So now you go to the 6th inning, and again, everybody's asking, why do you want to promote a guy like Brandon Sproat? The team's full right now. The team's full. Well, you always want to have the most talented options available. So, so that, hey, in certain situations, maybe you don't have to go to Ryan Helsley. People were questioning, Huascar Brazoban. Is he the best guy to put in the 6th inning? Well, Brazoban came in the 6th inning. He allowed Alec Boehm a single to Boehm. Nick Castellanos would line out next. Harrison Bader had a great game. He doubled. Boehm went to 3rd, and Mundo Sosa would then single. Alec Boehm scored after that, cutting the Mets lead from 5-2 to 5-3. So the game becomes a little closer. You had 2 force outs after that, Weston Wilson and Trey Turner. So Brazoban gave up 1 run. So already the bullpen allows 1 run. So you go to the 7th inning, and the 7th inning, the pitcher that you bring on is Tyler Rogers. Tyler Rogers is starting, in my opinion, to settle down. Another clean inning. Schwarber, Harper, and Realmuto all retired, and I just like the fact he just went through the middle of the lineup like butter. So that was very impressive by Tyler Rogers. And again, you're always trying to find, like, everybody keeps asking, who's the best guy that the Mets got? Is it Soto, Gregory Soto? Is it, obviously not Helsley, but right now, it was Soto, but it looks like the stock of Rogers is rising right now. The stock of Rogers is rising. The only guy who's without a doubt the worst is Ryan Helsley, which is, a very sad thing right now because he's been a talented guy. Supposedly he was tipping pitches, but, still, you're tipping pitches and you're still not being effective. All right, so you go to the 8th inning, and the 8th inning is, where the Phils actually tried to make their comeback. They tried to make their comeback. And again, if you're an offense and you're facing a guy like Ryan Helsley, a guy who's been struggling, I think that gives you more confidence. Because, you see the swings against Helsley. I mean, against the guy who throws 102 miles per hour, the offensive bats shouldn't be taking those type of swings. Now, you had Bohm start the inning, very good. You see him striking out. So Helsley struck him out, and I'm like, great. Those are the last 4 batters Helsley's faced, and he's done very well. But the next guy, Nick Castellanos, the guy who's one of the most aggressive batters in the game, walks. So, I mean, you just can't have that. You cannot have that in a 2-run game. And this, debating the fact bringing Helsley in, of course, I don't agree we should have brought him in. Not in back-to-back games, and not in a game in a 2-run deficit. I mean, that's nothing. That is nothing. So you have Nick Castellanos walked by Helsley, and then you have Harrison Bader at the plate, and he gets into one. He hits his 14th homer of the year, and, that ties the game. So right now, I'm just like, when the hell can we get this guy out? And the next batter up, Bryson Stott, you're thinking maybe he'd settle down. He doesn't. Helsley then walks Bryson Stott. And at this point, you have Carlos Mendoza not wanting to play games at all. He immediately goes to Edwin Diaz. And Edwin Diaz shows everyone why he is such a good closer. Edwin Diaz, you got to give this guy credit. I mean, you got to give Edwin Diaz credit because he's been besides 2019, he has been so super consistent. The only thing Edwin Diaz is not good at is holding runners on base. As you would see in the 8th inning, Bryson Stott, who is on base, he stole second base, and he would steal third base. Luckily, the Phillies wouldn't put any bat on the ball. Diaz struck out Marsh, and Diaz struck out Turner. So it was very, very good performance by Edwin Diaz. Now Edwin Diaz is going to be out there for the top of the ninth too. All right, so the Mets would try to get something going in the bottom of the 8th, but nothing really happened. Francisco Lindor would get a single, and everybody else, Jeff McNeil ground out, Luis Torrens strikeout, and Juan Soto striking out. But the good thing is that kind of set up the meat of the order for the 9th inning. So the top of the 9th inning, you have Edwin Diaz, again, showing you why he is the king of the closers, striking out Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper striking out, and JT Realmuto grounding out. Going through the heart of the Phillies order like butter, like Tyler Rogers. And this set us up for the magical 9th inning. And again, you're going up against Johan Duran. And this guy, I'm not going to take anything away from him because he is a lights-out closer. He is a lights-out closer. And again, going into this series, I'm like, we got Ryan Helsley and the Phils got Johan Duran. I mean, so I'm not feeling so great because I'm like, hey, that might be the difference between us being where we want to be and the Phils getting to where they want to be. But the Mets prove that, hey, this guy is beatable. All right, so starting off the 9th inning, you got Starling Marte at the plate, and, Johan Duran is throwing gas. He's getting it up there, 101, 102, and Marte, I think on a second or third pitch, gets a fastball in a part of the plate, throws the bat head down, short, quick stroke, grounder kind of up the middle, and gets on base, and beautiful. You got your leadoff man on. Pete Alonso, next guy up on the plate. And again, these guys are very aggressive off of Duran. Duran wasn't throwing a lot of pitches. The Mets hitters weren't working the count because they know how nasty this guy is with a splitter. So Pete Alonso, again, he was aggressive early in the count. He swung early. He got a single. Now you got your first 2 men on. And Brett Beatty was kind of the guy I was worried about in this particular lineup. But Brett Beatty would hit the ball, make, I would say, not great contact, but it blooped over the third baseman, and it fell in for a hit, and that loaded the bases, and it set the scene. Brandon Nimmo, bases loaded, no outs. And again, this was just a magical moment. Brandon Nimmo actually made great contact. He singled on a line drive to the center fielder, Bader. Starling Marte scores, and the Mets again defeated the Philadelphia Phillies. So a lot of great stuff. This game had a lot of great moments, but the Mets literally never gave up. They had some bad moments in this game. Helsley, that's a bad moment. But again, they showed you that they can have the ability to battle back as well. And yeah, I saw that in the chat. So the Reds are losing. So the Reds, if they lose to the Dodgers, and they're losing 6-1. 6-1, that would give the Mets a 3.5 game lead over Cincy, and the Mets are right now 5 games behind Philly. The Mets win tomorrow. That's a 4-game lead. That is not insurmountable at all. At all. And again, I said the Reds have a very tough schedule. The Reds right now, it's you can kind of see against the D-backs. The Reds were a little hot, but they lost a lot of steam against the D-backs. I'm going to check out the schedule for the Phillies because, it's a big problem that the Phillies lost Zach Wheeler because we see, even with the New York Mets, having a guy like Nolan McLean, a guy who can be a stopper, a guy who literally kind of turned this season around, in my opinion, a guy who changed the stink in the clubhouse, the guy who's putting a positivity, like literally energy, good stuff all over the place. You lose a guy like Zach Wheeler, a guy that you could be confident in now and in the playoffs. That's not an easy thing to do. And that's what the Phillies did. Now, Christopher Sanchez supposedly stepping up. I mean, he didn't step up, in my opinion. Another guy, Jesus Luzardo. Again, you can't have like a guy like that with that short of a fuse in a playoff situation with the opposing stadium's crowd going nuts. I mean, you don't need a guy like that with such a short fuse. All right, so I'm just bringing up the Phillies schedule. Okay, so the Phillies, they have that one. Obviously, they play us one more time tomorrow. Let's assume they lose. All right, so it's going to be a 4-game lead by the Phillies over the Mets. Then after that, the Phillies go to Atlanta. They play Atlanta for 4 games. So, I mean, Atlanta, they could be a little feisty. They could be a little feisty team. Then after that, starting September, you have the Phillies playing the Brewers. That's not going to be an easy series. That is certainly not going to be an easy series. Then they play the Marlins. The Marlins got some nice young pitching. Then they play the Mets. 4-game series against the Mets, folks. 4-game series. So I like that. You got 4 games. Even if you take 3 out of 4, you'll be gaining ground on them. Then they are playing KC. Then they go out to play the LA Dodgers. That's not going to be another easy series as well. Then they play the D-backs. The D-backs have shown you to have some fight, some punch as well. They got the Marlins and they got the Twins. So, I mean, this schedule is not, crazy hard. I mean, they got the Mets, they got the Brewers, and they got the Dodgers. So those will be the 3 toughest teams that they play. The Mets certainly, in my opinion, have a harder schedule than the Phillies. But the Reds, in my opinion, you could argue that the Reds have a much tougher schedule than the Mets. But, we'll see. You got to get hot at the right time, and I think the Mets are starting to get hot at the right time. The team is starting to take a breath. You have the reinforcements coming. You got McGill, you have Jonah Tong, and again, you have McLean, and you also have the threat of Brandon Sproat coming. And what that does is hopefully it pressures all the other pitchers who are here, everybody to pitch on the A game, everybody to raise their game to the next level. I think that's what that does. Having a guy like Brandon Sproat down under the wings and potentially coming to take somebody's job. I mean, it's next guy up. The best man up is going to have that job. All right, folks. So I'm going to call it quits for tonight. I'm a little short, but I'm going to talk to everybody very, very soon. Hopefully, we all enjoy this win. Let it sink in. We got another big game tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for being in here. Great comments, great stuff, all great. Have a nice night, folks. Have a nice night. And again, tomorrow we take this series and then we go up from there.